Ill Iwade, Highway Road, Newington, Kent, ME9 7HY. And I'll thank the officer for outlining the application and any updates, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. I'll share my screen, then I've got a bit of an update for you. Hopefully you can all see that. That's an updated site plan of the development that's recently been provided by the applicants. The update's as follows. Members will note the tabled update. I should clarify that further to paragraph 5.2 of that update, we've now received a total of 19 further third-party comments, of which 18 were expressing support for the proposal and 1 was raising objection. I should emphasise that there is no in-principle objection to the use of land for an animal sanctuary. On the right site and with the appropriate planning controls in place, such a use would potentially be supported by officers. However, the application site is sensitively located immediately adjacent to a designated ancient woodland. These are a finite and diminishing resource nationally, which enjoy protection at a national level under the National Planning Policy Framework. The site also sits within an area of high landscape value, where special care needs to be taken to ensure that new development does not detract from the quality of the landscape. Given these designations in particular, but also the various other issues itemised in the reports before members, officers have concluded that this is not the right site for the proposed development. Careful consideration was given to the additional information provided since the application was deferred by members last December, but due to the lack of supporting specialist information and plans, and concerns raised from KCC Ecology and KCC Highways, who are still not satisfied with the information as submitted, coupled with 4 registered noise abatement breaches where environmental health investigations are ongoing, officers do not believe that sufficient information has been provided to address the previous concerns. For these reasons, officers remain of the view, as set out on pages 25 and 26 of the agenda, that the harm arising from the development would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the local plan adopted 2017 and the National Planning Policy Framework and the other material planning considerations, and therefore it is recommended that planning permission is refused for the 5 reasons set out. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Could I now invite Amy Jones, please, the applicant, to speak on this item?
Hello, everyone. Sorry, excuse my nerves. So I'm going to keep this short, which for me is not common. But I've written this speech a number of times now, and I've come to the realisation that 3 minutes just unfortunately isn't long enough for me to address every single issue, allegation and flaw in this case. I think from the very beginning, when the charity's request to have a pre-planning application advice was rejected by the council, things have just not been right. Many things that have been asked of the charity have been pretty much impossible, intentionally sometimes, I believe. For example, being given just a couple of weeks to produce an in-depth ecology report, which even professional ecologists deemed impossible, as they'd need a minimum of 2 to 3 months to carry out such a survey. In the last 15 months, you name it, the charity's had it thrown at it. From the serious stuff, such as purely malicious animal welfare reports, to the plain ridiculous, like accusations of excessive mooing from the cows, and of course, flying emus. The more I read the council's reports and admissions, the more inaccurate statements arise. Surely these are meant to be statements of fact based upon evidence, not allegations, hearsay or assumptions. There's no way I can address all these myself and would rather they were dealt with by a specialist law professional. I apologise, there's still some queries still outstanding and information missing, such as the exact size of the car parking area and details of the biodiversity enhancements, but these are all things that could easily be conditioned. I'm not a planner, nor am I an architect. I'm just a person who wants to help animals and people. And the Happy Pants Ranch is not a company or a business, but a registered charity that passionately promotes being kind to all kinds. It's a small sanctuary who wants to do good, flourish, and right any wrongdoings it has unintentionally made, because the charity, thousands of people who support it, and myself believe that the benefit of the work it does far outweighs the negatives, although I suppose flying emus would be quite cool. Thank you for listening. I've kept it short, and I'd just like to say the noise breaches, there's been 4 noise breaches in 5 months, which to me does not even qualify as a frequent noise. And that's it.
Thank you, Erin. Could I invite Councillor Woodford as ward member to speak on the item first? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As ward member, I previously spoke in favour of this application and my opinion has not changed. I therefore have to disagree with officers. I believe the benefits of the sanctuary do outweigh any harm. I believe this will be a massive benefit to the Swale area, and the sanctuary is vital as there's no other facilities locally that provide the same service. It provides valued animal welfare benefits and benefits for volunteers. There is a clear and overwhelming public support for the sanctuary, with many personal testimonies from individuals expressing the benefits to them and their mental health. As before, I feel the concerns raised in the report can be satisfied with conditions if planning were granted. A condition requiring an independent ecologist report that any recommendations from that report are implemented would meet the KCC biodiversity concerns. KCC Highways have suggested their own condition within the report, allowing the visits to the sanctuary on a temporary 2-year basis so that all of the parking and traffic issues can be better monitored and addressed. The report seems to indicate the Forestry Commission are now happy that any structures have been removed from the ancient woodland buffer zone. One of the major concerns raised was the noise abatement issue. I struggle with this. The land is already agricultural land in a rural setting. The land hadn't been made use of for this purpose for many years, but surely if the landowner had wished to reinstate the use, they could have cleared the land and done so without any planning permission, as it was already designated as agricultural land. They could have easily decided to keep livestock on the site, and therefore the change of use being requested and the noise generated from the animal sanctuary isn't out of the norm for what would legally could have been expected from this location. Could officers please clarify that point? Another concern mentioned in the report several times is that animals have escaped the site and that this is well documented. Can officers please tell members where this is documented and where the evidence came from originally? Is this reports from residents, as I believe the applicant strongly disagrees with the statement? I therefore have to disagree with officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Could I now invite Councillor Mike Baldock, visiting member, to speak on this item, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Sorry, just hold on a second, Mike.
Apologies. In Appendix 2, and I wasn't at that first meeting, but I've read the documentation very carefully. At the top of page 48, it says, the chairman moved the officer recommendation to approve, and this was seconded by Councillor Martin. My understanding is that the proposal was to refuse and not to approve. And if that's the case, I'd like to understand that.
Yeah, it was actually deferred. The recommendation, was to refuse. Yeah, so there's quite clear typo on that at the top of page 48. You're quite right. Yes, you're quite right. Thank you. No. Yeah, thank you. We'll have that amended as well. Thank you very much. Councillor Baldock, please. You have 3 minutes to speak on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application is for an animal sanctuary that already provides huge benefits to the borough. A place of safety for animals with nowhere else to go, open air exercise and socialising for a number of volunteers, including very rare opportunities for disabled people. This is a massive resource for us to just reject. It is a massive benefit to the borough. Most of the points alleging harm are either lacking in proof or can be dealt with by sensible conditions. I am alarmed by the constant reference in this report to allegations or possible actions being possibly considered by other agencies. It is for those agencies to take action if they feel it appropriate and for the correct legal procedures to take place. It is not for this planning committee to be asked to prejudge any possible future actions possibly taken by other agencies. Indeed, when councillors raise such objections on other applications, they are quickly shot down by being told that this is not a planning matter. So why is this case different? Looking at the reasons for refusal, these seem somewhat odd, and most can easily be dealt with by conditions. There's talk about the harm that has been done, but who else is going to restore the land? At least this gives us an opportunity of people who are going to do some good. The buildings are no different in size and scale than could be reasonably expected if the land were in agricultural use, and the keeping of pigs or other livestock here would be noisier and allow more buildings than this is being proposed. It could be done without planning permission. The gates and fencing, which are not really very different from those seen in many rural locations, can again be dealt with by conditions. The applicants can appeal it if they don't like the condition, and the named inspector can decide. Objection 4 asks the committee to predetermine a non-planning matter. As I mentioned, far worse could be introduced to the site as agricultural land without planning permission needed. As for the open day, this is again quite easily dealt with by a temporary condition as suggested by Kent County Council. I fear this reason would be laughed out of court at an appeal. The bottom line is, do the benefits outweigh the harm? The loss of a place of safety for animals with nowhere to go, volunteer benefits and disabled experiences, which are very rare provisions which this council has no plans to replace anywhere else in the borough. Against some alleged noise, some gates we don't like, and some environmental harm already committed, and which the council has no idea how it could be restored. Let's not quibble about fences. Animals' lives are at stake. The balance is clear. The future benefits massively outweigh the potential possible future harm. I would urge the committee to please support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock. I now move the...
I would like to speak on items 2.2, 2.4 and 2.5. Thank you.
And I would like to consider that and get back to you. Thank you, Councillor Baldock. I now move the officer recommendation to refuse. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Henderson, thank you. Councillor Winkless.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do concur with the two ward councillors on this one. That people are saying there's complaints about noises coming from animals. Well, in a rural area, animals do make a noise. That is part of a rural community. There's basically 19 people in favour of this and one objection. So my feeling on this one is I will be going against the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Fowle, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I was not here when this was first discussed, but sometimes I feel we look at the rules and conditions, but we forget about compassion. Animal welfare is needed in this age. We only have to look at the numerous dogs being found in Lower Halstow and elsewhere in terrible conditions in our borough. As I believe for sometimes compassion has deserted this world, and I do not want to follow that path, and for that reason I will support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Fowle. However, animal welfare isn't a planning consideration, and that we're here to do the planning element. As difficult as it is.
I'm just trying to say compassion at the moment.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Councillor Henderson, please.
Yeah, I wasn't at the first of these meetings, but have looked at the paperwork very carefully. And I would like to put a different point of view. We're talking about looking after animals, and I absolutely applaud the wish of this charity to do that. However, if we're going to talk about protecting animals, we must talk about protecting the whole of biodiversity. And the fact remains, and this is not an opinion from officers and not a this was reported, a considerable amount of damage, and I would suggest probably irreparable damage in the immediate future, has been done to the edge of an ancient woodland, and ancient woodlands are nationally protected and nationally important for biodiversity, and damage has been done to the site itself in terms of hardcore laid there. So it would be very difficult actually to return it to being farmland. That has damaged biodiversity. And I believe damage has also been done to ponds and waterways. And however we may feel about allowing this to happen, that none of that should have happened, and we cannot just ignore it. There are other problems about noise and about traffic, and certainly I'm very concerned that there is precious little information about how much traffic would be generated immediately and then later on. I'm less worried about noise, but certainly there are cases where that's a problem. And we have a very clear recommendation with a lot of sound information provided to us, and we need to make a decision on planning grounds. And so I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we make that decision on planning grounds. And if we do, then it should be a decision to refuse. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dender, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I remember the last meeting where we discussed this, and I was one of the ones that, I can't remember if I proposed or seconded the deferral, because I felt that they should have a chance. Like everybody says, we have to show some compassion. We do need somewhere for animals, a rescue of animals and so on. And I thought they should have a chance to redeem that and do more to mitigate what they'd already done, in fact. However, that has not happened. They had 3 months. They've actually ended up with 4.5 months because of stretching it. And I totally concur with Councillor Henderson on virtually every point. A lot of biodiversity has been destroyed, irreparably destroyed, I believe. The ancient woodland has been treated, and that isn't a matter of knowledge, it's a matter of common sense, has been treated abysmally. The corridor to the ancient woodland was not left, and you could look up on the internet and find that out in 15 minutes flat. That's not difficult. So I think there was a lot of rush to get on that site and not a lot of research into what was needed to have the site ready and appropriate for animals. So I'm sorry, but I don't believe enough work has been done since we deferred it. And I totally agree with the officers. And I would commend the officers. They've done a massive amount of work during the deferral period and come up with almost all the information we asked for. And I would commend them for that. I was hoping, I really was hoping, that they would come up with something that would make me able to say that I would support